Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer or food maker selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast.
I'm Kat Fields-White.
And I'm Bridget Myers. We're longtime farmers market managers, educators, and consultants. Get ready to catch up on all things farmers market pros with us. Today we're chatting about managing applications from first read to launching success.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by the newest online version of Vendor 101, helping small farmers and food makers launch successfully at farmers markets and streamlining the application process for market managers. If you're just beginning to think about starting a farmers market business, or if you recently started operating at markets and would like to brush up on your operations knowledge, this is the class for you. Are you a market manager? Reduce time spent answering prospective vendors' inquiries and help new farmers and vendors get off to a good start by connecting them with Vendor 101. Register today by clicking the Vendor 101 logo on the homepage at farmersmarketpros.com.
Well, welcome back to Tent Talk, everybody. Today we are chatting about managing vendor applications. Every day, all day.
Every day, all day. And into the night. And into the wee hours, I feel like.
Wee hours. If you're a market manager, we will share some ideas about the process, including how to let a declined vendor down gently. It's a delicate art. And if you're a small farmer or food maker or crafter, we have some tips and tricks to help create a winning application.
That's right. The application is everything.
It's everything.
Well, it's not everything. The product is everything.
Yeah. Okay, I'll back up a little bit.
But we can't understand what your product is unless your application is thorough.
That's right. It's a first impression.
So speaking of sharing knowledge about things, before we get started on that topic, I just want to remind folks that the request for proposals is now open for the Intense Conference 2024. We'll be back in San Diego in March of 2024, as usual. You know, we might take that on the road eventually, but at least for one more year, we're in San Diego, right on the water.
Not a bad place to be.
Not a bad place to be, especially in March.
Yeah.
We see you, Canadians.
Bring your shorts and join us.
So if you have a superpower at markets, and you know you do, and want to talk to our audience about that and share and give them some actionable tips on what to do, we are taking proposals now. We have a request for proposal form, easy to fill out. It'll ask you some specific questions. Once we get that, we'll be in touch about maybe workshopping your presentation. We'll maybe schedule a quick Zoom to talk to you a little bit about narrowing a topic. Sometimes folks send us proposals where they want to teach everything. It's like, no, this is your session. You need to narrow in on your superpower. But we've gotten some really good proposals already. I've got a few that I'm pretty sure we're going to accept. We're still taking them. We're looking specifically for proposals on sessions on zero waste. I'm really excited about that right now. Dealing with climate change issues, dealing with vendors in a new way to increase equity and access. So get them to us. Send us those ideas. You can submit now by going to, look how easy we've made this for you, www.conferencerfp.com. All one word, conferencerfp.com.
I'm just learning in this moment that Kat has bought yet another domain name to add to her list of 5,000. What is happening?
I'm using it. Not just like I'm hoarding. I mean, this is a sensible domain name.
But the other ones that you're hoarding.
Okay, some of them I'm hoarding. I admit it.
That's great, though. How easy? How easy is that?
It's so easy to remember.
Conferencerfp.com. It's catchy.
That's right. I think so too. I think we can rent it out to other conferences when we're not using it.
Here we go. Okay, one idea at a time here.
All right.
All right. Let's get to our topic of the day. So we want to talk about applications, folks applying to your market, or if you are applying to markets, how these work. There's a couple different ways that market managers accept applications. Either they are running a market and you apply, and then if you get a space, you get a space, and then you're there. And you're just there infinity until you break some rule or move away or outgrow the market, right?
Open a restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Retire.
We call it consistent reservation. So we're just expecting you there every week until one of us has an issue. But a lot of markets, I think, have an application yearly, even if they are year-round markets, or they are seasonal markets. So they're doing a new application every season because you don't know what's happening in that off time for your vendors that are a part of your market. So you want to make sure that they're still around, they're still interested. So the application opportunity is kind of arising every year for a large group of vendors all at once.
Right.
So is it trickling in or is it happening all at once?
Right. Yep. So there's pros and cons with each method. If you're running an all year market, especially, taking applications all year keeps things fresh. So you're getting new vendors in. I mean, if you were running a retail store, look at your local grocery store or department store, you would not keep exactly the same products on the shelf year in, year out, every month, year after year. People want to see something new and exciting. So taking applications all the time kind of keeps that fresh. Bridget actually is managing the map at our big market, and she's decided over time that she wants to keep a certain amount of spaces that are flexible.
Yes, I think my first approach was, let's just get all these spots filled with people that come every week. It'd be much easier for me. I don't have to deal with it. Like, okay, yes, you can substitute this week. Okay, no, I don't have space for you. Okay, do you want to substitute? Oh, I was counting on you to ask me, but you're actually doing a different event this week. All those things that go along with having flex space. But now I have really kind of changed my tune regarding subs, even like as a longtime farmers market manager, I've kind of come around on this. I think that having and seeing a lot of new, eager, like young business people coming into the farmers market space, like
I want at heart,
young at heart. Yeah. So that's what I'm not young, just like new businesses, right? They're fresh, like they're ready to go. They offer something that not anyone else is offering around. They're not in a ton of markets already, because sometimes you get farmers market vendors that come in and then they're a really great vendor and then they go expand to all the other markets and they're at every single market in town, which is lovely. And I love those vendors a lot, but it's nice to have something that's like unique and new at your market. So you're not going to get that unless you have space at your market to bring those folks in. So it's been nice to have some flex space where I can kind of rotate new vendors in or just really kind of help them along in their journey and give them a space to grow their vendor business.
Yeah, I think it makes so much sense. I mean, you need that balance. You want some really consistent vendors. You know that everybody wants to see that hummus guy at every market every time they go, or that particular farmer that's a big farmer that does a whole lot of markets.
Yeah.
But then you also want your market to be somewhat distinct and fresh and specific to your area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good to keep it together. And if you're taking applications all the time, you always have people in the pipeline if a vendor is retiring or moving away or leaving the market for some reason, and in the pipeline to sub. So if it's summertime, I think this was just on our blog last week in our newsletter, if you got that, more people now have gotten kind of a sense of a work-life balance.
How dare they?
Darn it. And so we're seeing people taking vacations.
I kid. We are also working on that. It's good. It's a benefit. We are seeing happier vendors because of
That's right.
So they're happier.
And happier managers.
Yes.
You know? Yeah, we think it's a good idea. But that means that you need some substitute vendors so that you are using every space that you have and keeping a real full, vibrant market. So having those applications coming in all year is helpful. It's also good for growing markets. So if you've got a site that has the potential to grow, you want to keep taking applications and looking at, oh, can I open another block now? Or can I open another section of the park if you're in that kind of environment? Or, you may have a place to expand to and make it a bigger market. That bigger critical mass, depending on the size of your community, can mean a bigger mass of shoppers. They're attracted to that big, vibrant market. So having those applications always coming in gives you a chance to say, hey, we're going to wait until we've got 10 or 12 really good vendors and we're going to open this new section.
Exactly. I think I talked about this with another market manager who was growing a like kind of smaller weekday market that was doing really well when we were at the conference. And I was talking to her about like, how do you add new vendors to this growing market? Because you can't have like too many of one thing all at once, and if you get like 5 jewelry and 5 prepared food applications, like you can't just add those 10 vendors on top of what you have because it just throws the balance out of whack. So it's a lot more work because you have to say, okay, I like this jewelry vendor and I want to add them as soon as we add 3 more farms and 3 more grocery vendors and 1 more prepared food. So like they have to kind of hang tight a little bit. And it's hard to maybe communicate that to the vendors and also to keep that straight in your brain as the market manager. And it's hard to kind of explain that system. I think vendors are mostly really good about like, okay, this is like a complicated puzzle. It's a little Tetris situation. So yes, I really like your product. You're great. I don't have room right now, but I am growing this market and I want you to come in the next time that I am adding a jewelry space or whatever, or farm or whatever. So it's kind of like keeping that in mind as you go along, but it's important because that's how you grow a market like intentionally. And that's how you curate a market, is to make sure that you're balancing all these categories instead of just throwing everybody who applies together.
Right. Exactly. And it's funny. I mean, you got to look at how much time you've got to go into long explanations, but I've explained that to a lot of applicants and they're totally unaware that all that's going on.
Yeah.
They're just having their feelings hurt that they can't get in right now. And when I say this market's growing, but we have to keep it in balance. Once I add 5 grocery vendors and another farmer, then we can add a non-food vendor.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're still just offended and have their feelings hurt, but a lot of times they're like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So the more communicative you can be with your applicants, I think they do understand and they appreciate the fact that you're growing a market that is going to remain profitable for all of your vendors and have a good balance and keep shoppers coming back.
Exactly. Yeah. And explain that we don't do exclusivity. It's not like you're going to be the only, tomato farmer at this market, but I already have 2 tomato farmers, and this market needs a little bit more shopper critical mass before I add another one. So just kind of showing them that timeline. And then you're not saying no, goodbye. Right. And you're not saying the wait list is 2 years. It's something in between.
Right.
Yeah,
so for sure.
Yeah.
That whole wait list is 2 years thing that runs like wildfire among vendor applicants. Then they tell each other this. Mm-hmm. I don't know where that got started, but it doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. The wait list time is totally dependent on what you sell and what vendor is leaving a market or what farmer is checking out. If a farmer that sells leafy greens checks out, I'm not going to put in another citrus farm next to the citrus farm that's already there. Exactly, I'm going to look for another leafy green farmer. So depending on what you grow, your wait list may be 10 days if a situation happens to be happening.
Yeah.
Or it may be 2 years. We try to not stretch people out for that long. We would certainly suggest they try another market in the meantime.
I will say, though, we've had a handful of vendors that have been like, they applied, and then a couple of years later, we're like, oh, well,
let's go back and see if they're still around.
See if they're still around, or they're at other markets and just not one on the same day as our market. And we'll say, hey, are you still interested? Because we had a vendor in your category leave, and we've always really liked your product. If you're still interested, we do have space available now, although we didn't have it up until now. And sometimes they've been like, heck yeah, I'll start, this weekend. So yeah, sometimes it works out that way. And
sometimes the application process is very fast and sometimes it's very slow.
Yeah. And I think trying to explain that a little bit as much as possible to vendors will just make all markets more successful, because if the vendors understand that process a little bit, they get less discouraged and they get less disenchanted with the farmers market kind of system and how they get into markets. If they have a little bit more understanding and just helps them with their patience, it helps them grow their business. I mean, we are as market operators in the business of helping cultivate and grow other small businesses. Yeah, that's our job.
That's our job.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So folks that take applications seasonally, it's typically, sometimes it's a market that's around all year. I have seen those sometimes say, okay, we're going to start over with applications. Generally speaking, there's a little built-in bias towards taking somebody back who's been there the year before and the year before that.
Returning
so it's
vendors.
Not like they're kicking everybody out and absolutely starting fresh.
Yeah.
But they do. And, people's businesses have changed. Sometimes you have a vendor that's all of a sudden gotten huge, wide distribution into like a big box store. Mm-hmm. Maybe you feel like that's not the best person to be taking that space that could be used for somebody who's just emerging. So sometimes you do see long-term vendors that kind of scoot out during that process. But mostly what we see when people are taking applications all at once for just a limited time of the year, and usually it's like a 1 or 2 month period, is that they've got a seasonal market. So they're only open, say, from April to the end of September because of weather concerns or what's able to be grown in their climate. There are a lot of seasonal markets still in various parts of the country. So those folks a lot of times will take all of their applications at once. And so that gives them the opportunity to really balance their market, because they're looking at everybody that's available to attend, and they can decide this percentage is going to be farms, this percentage is going to be grocery, this is how many prepared food vendors or craft vendors we might have in addition to the basic farm population. So that probably in a way is really easier than what
I'm like, what a dream.
Right.
Although I'm sure it has some flaws and hard work and things that I'm just not even thinking of, because how can I comprehend this? But yeah, it sounds like that'd be great to just look at everybody at once and slap them all together. It's kind of like opening a new market, you kind of look at that balance. But with a returning seasonal market, you probably have a lot more interest and a lot more people that are eager to join because they know what's going to happen every season. So it's different than a new market.
Right. Yeah. But there are some similarities. For a brand new market, you're doing the same thing. You're opening up to applications. And generally speaking, as you grow a market, you'll keep taking applications and keep growing. So that's another reason you might only take applications seasonally, is if you have a really finite amount of space. I mean, you just can't grow. So you want to see everybody at once and see how you're going to balance your market, because if you get an application later in the year, oh, well, you don't have anywhere to put them.
Yeah, so, exactly. It's kind of like doing an annual event, I think. Like you just putting everybody together at once. So
for sure.
Yeah.
And then some folks like to do billing by season. So their vendors pay for the whole, 5 or 6 month season up front. So if you're going to do that, you may as well take all the applications at once. I will suspect that there are some people that take applications only once a year because they've always done it that way.
Yeah.
As we know, that's a curse sometimes. We've always done it that way. It is hard to change the way you do things. But if you have always done it that way and you think there's any reason to keep taking applications all year, just be open to new ideas. It's fun. It's fun to change things up.
We've fallen into that trap so many times with lots of systems, but you know what? Then we change it and we go, oh, we should change this like 10 years ago. Whoops.
Yeah, for sure. So, so look at different ways of doing things. I also know from talking to market managers that some managers that take all of their applications at once on a seasonal basis actually do continue to take applications during the course of their season, but they don't tell anybody. And so I'm constantly saying, okay, if you're honestly taking applications because you have a little room to grow or you have some attrition, how about you post that on their website?
Yeah.
Is this like a private club where you have to know the password? I don't get it, but I have seen that a few times.
Farmers market speakeasy. You gotta know where the little book is. Pull it out.
Yep. So we take all of our applications all year, all the time. We also do all of our applications online.
Yeah.
And that's just honestly because we have a large market. There's just too many to manage by doing that face-to-face thing. We have a large team. It's not just one of us. I like email because it's easy to remember what I said to somebody or what they said to me. So we really do an online process. And we get a lot of pressure from our insurance company because we do run some really large markets. They want to see written documentation of the application, of the decline or acceptance, of the contract that, you check that box that says you've read the vendor rules before you join the market. They want everything hyper documented. Now, if you're in a really small town or you have a really small market and you're just one person, and we still hear every once in a while in our private group from people that are volunteer market managers, and it's a one-man show, I just makes my head want to explode. You deserve to get paid for what you do. But if you're that kind of operation, if you're really small, it might make sense to take applications at the market still.
Yeah. Or some people I think are running markets and then they have like a Monday through Friday day job that they're going to, and they're doing, if it's a small enough market and maybe they're volunteer or it's just like a side gig. There are markets where they're just doing the paperwork in the evening and then running the market on the weekends, and they have a little volunteer team. So that makes sense to want to get that done during your market day, so you're not dealing with it outside of the market day.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And even when we had kind of smaller weekday markets, I think I would talk more to prospective vendors at the info booth that came. I just wouldn't say like, yes, you're in or no, you're not in. I would maybe ask them some more questions and get to know them and like their personality a little bit more, which was kind of nice. I could kind of feel them out a little bit and just be like, is this going to be a good vibe? Like, are we going to jive together? And then, they apply and we can kind of do the background stuff online. But at the busy market, honestly, like on Saturdays, I just don't we're like processing EBT and we're dealing with traffic control and all those things. And so I usually just try to explain to folks like, hey, I can't even wrap my head around like putting a new vendor in next week because I'm so consumed right now with what's happening today at the market. And so it's for your benefit for me not to say yes or no to you right now or even accept an application here because I can't think that far ahead, and you might get a better answer if we just do this on Tuesday when I'm in the office.
That's right. If you're answer me now while I'm dealing with a busker that's too loud and somebody crossing the street that doesn't look safe and an inspector that's just shown up. My answer would probably be no. That's the fact. It takes less muscles to say no than it does to say yes. Did you know that? So, that will tend to be the fast answer.
Yeah.
So we do try to explain to people patiently that, hey, we never manage applications at our markets. At our markets, we're busy managing traffic and vendors and inspectors and customers' questions and EBT. So send us an email.
Yeah.
If you're an applicant, that's the first thing you want to do is find a website, find a Facebook page. There's probably some information somewhere about how that manager prefers to get applications and take that preference into account.
Yeah. Yes. And maybe I know that applications are accepted in all different ways, but you need to know who you're talking to. And just like if you were doing a job application, you'd want to just make sure that you're going to do it the way that business wants you to do it. And so trying to kind of coerce a market manager into taking your application at the market, that's not a great first impression. So maybe just, they have a system set up for a reason. And we put a lot of thought into our vendor application process. So just kind of follow those guidelines, whatever the process may be at whatever market that you're looking to. I do appreciate that vendors come out to the market. And so when I see vendors that come to the info booth to ask about getting a booth, I'm always like, yes, thank you for coming out to the market. This is great. You should take a look, because we do get some online applications from folks that have never visited our market, and it perplexes the mind. why you would want to be a vendor at a place that you've never been to.
It does. Yeah. I've gone through whole application processes without realizing that sometimes. And then somebody says, so how busy is that market? I'm like, whoa. Have you not been to this market before you applied?
Yeah.
So that's silly. So yes, do go out to the market. That's definitely one of our tips.
So silly.
We respond to every application we get. And this is something that we're constantly having conversations about. Do I have to answer an application from somebody who clearly did not read the intro to our application form that says we're not accepting applications in that category?
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I'm tempted to just ignore them because, hey, they should have read that. But I'm a polite person. So I do tend to now send extremely short responses to that kind of application that just says, as noted on our application intro, we're not accepting applications for jewelry or clothing at this market right now. That kind of thing. Tempted to add candles. Candles in our area has gotten to be as ubiquitous as jewelry. There's only 4 people in San Diego County that don't make candles.
It's the new hot thing.
It is.
If I was on TikTok, I could probably tell you that people are interested in candles. We could get somebody young on our team that can tell us what the trends are so we know what applications we're going to get.
Ooh, have you crossed the line over to you're not our young staffer anymore?
I'm 40 this year and it's just, we
do have some younger
people to go to bed.
On our team. Maybe we should have Caitlin and Ingrid looking at applications nowadays, right?
And that's great. Yeah. They can tell us what's cool. And we can tell them to plant things there that's ooh, it'd be cool. It's the new cool thing to make mustard.
Please somebody put that on TikTok. It's a cool thing to make mustard in San Diego.
Tell the kids to do it.
Thank goodness I'm in Philly part of the time and people make mustard there. Yay. Yeah. So we do always respond. We always respond first to applications with a question. No matter what, no matter how thoroughly you filled out the application. For one thing, there's probably something that could use some clarification. And for the other thing, here's a secret pro tip. We always answer with a question because that lets us know how promptly the applicant reads and responds to emails and whether they listen to what's being said. So did they answer you promptly? Which means they might do that if you need to send out a vendor advisory. Did they actually read the questions you sent them and are they answering those as opposed to doing the political thing and just going with the talking points about their product and not really answering, where are you sourcing your ingredients? Do you have any farm ingredients? Do you want a weekly rain or shine space or are you looking for a pop-up space? So we ask a couple of specific questions and we look for what's this person's attention to detail? Did they read the questions? Are they answering them promptly?
Yeah. It'll tell you a lot about just how your working relationship is going to be with that person. And I mean, depending on what you value as a market manager, you can kind of tailor that.
Sure.
What's kind of a sticking point and what's something that maybe you just want to get out of the way so both you and the applicant can get clear on that before you move forward and, maybe waste each other's time.
For sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Now, in terms of equity and our efforts to make things more open and accessible, we do take more phone calls than we used to, just because we have some vendors who perhaps English isn't their first language. They haven't grown up doing a lot of communication in a written way. And so we will answer some questions over the phone if they need some clarification, but we still, because we need those written contracts and written documents, we do make them fill out the email. We have to know that they're going to fit into that system that our markets are set up to have to fit into. But then we will go through some more explanatory process over the phone, typically. Not so much in person during the application process, but we know we can be alerted that we're going to need to do a little bit more explanation of market rules and things in person, that they maybe communicate a little bit better in person than they do in writing at that point.
Yeah. And if you have an applicant or a new vendor that is having trouble with email or language that's spelled out, I know we had a vendor a long time ago, he's still with us, but his English wasn't super great. And so he talked to me at the market and was like, hey, I get these emails, but I can't read them. I don't know what they say. Can you tell me what it said? But it was really an advisory about that day. So by the time I saw him, it was kind of too late for the information. So we kind of talked about it and kind of said, oh, well, can you do this and this? And then it turned out that he's like, oh, well, can I just have my son read it? And it's yes, of course. And he kind of thought oh, it's a business email. He can't share that info with anyone else. And I was like, yes, of course, have your son. He's like, can my son reply to you? I go, yeah, of course. And he, if there's any questions that he has, just have him email me. I can email with your son. That's fine. Cause he's fluent English speaker. And it solved all those communication problems. And he just had his, I mean, I didn't send him a ton of stuff, but if I needed something, I would just kind of address it to him and his son in an email and just say, hey, can you please send this paperwork over? Or can you please tell your dad that we're changing locations or whatever, So it was just a way to kind of work around a language barrier. And it ended up working out really well for both of us. He was happy. I was happy. Information was getting communicated. And actually his son learned a lot about the business. And now he works at the booth a lot. And it's like, he got a lot of background in this, like how businesses work. So yeah, there's usually ways that you can figure that out with folks that aren't accustomed to communicating via email only.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
You do have to do certain things just legally to cover yourself, but try to be open to other ways of doing things.
Yeah.
When we look at vendors that, we typically ask on our application, what other markets have you done? And so we want to look then at, are they experienced in any way at any kind of market or event? And then who are they experienced with? Are they experienced with annual events, which is totally different than operating at a farmer's market that's happening every week, all year long, rain or shine. We expect you to be there. It's not just an art festival or a food fair or something along that line. So we look at that and we ask people specifically if they've got a bunch of experience at annual events. Are you looking for a weekly commitment, or are you looking for the type of schedule where you come on alternate weeks or where you just pop up occasionally? It used to be we only had weekly openings, and still for our farmers and grocery people, we try to keep them pretty close to weekly because we have a customer base that we've trained to do their grocery shopping at the market. So they show up with a list and they want to see those folks. But for hot food or we've got a little craft section at most of our markets, those folks don't necessarily need to be there every week, year round. So we've developed some alternate week schedules. Again, that's a way of keeping our offerings fresh, and it lets more people participate. But you want to be clear on that in the application process. And then the other thing we look at, if a vendor's experienced with other farmers markets, we're pretty familiar with the farmers markets in our area. And it may be that they're really experienced with a set of markets that are much more loose about how they manage things. We know that market manager doesn't necessarily ask for an insurance certificate or check your permits entirely or make sure that the type of permit you have applies to what you're selling. So if we have somebody that's experienced in those markets, we make sure that they understand that these are the rules that we're going to have to work within.
Yeah, we've had that conversation a lot. It's not like, oh, you're at these markets that have different rules, you can't ever come to our market. It's just we try to make sure that we're really explicit about like our expectation is that everyone's on time. Like you cannot arrive late at our markets. Whereas some markets, they let people kind of slide in whenever, not whenever, but like late. Or if they sell out, they can pack up and go home. Like that's a hard no at our markets. And so just making sure that they understand that, because it's just a clarity of rules and guidelines with people. Sure. It's not like and then I know that there's vendors that vend at both kinds of markets around town. And it's like at this one market, they play by these rules. And then at the other market, they play, and they're fine just doing whatever the rules are where they are.
As usual. It's all about communication.
Yeah, for sure.
Just getting the message across. Now, if we get an applicant that has no market or event experience or very little, they maybe just started in a couple of markets, we do always point them towards Vendor 101. We've talked about Vendor 101 before. It's the class that we developed. It's now available online for people considering opening a market business or just getting started with a market business. Teaches a lot about costing and labeling, making sure you're doing things that'll benefit your business. It also teaches a lot about the application process, what we expect to be able to see to evaluate your application, how to operate at markets, what the typical expectation is, what permit requirements are, et cetera. And we created that class because of the volume of applications that we manage and because that, hey, I'd like to be a farmer's market vendor. What does it take? We know that that's a several hour long conversation to do it thoroughly and not a 5-minute phone call or a 3-line email. So we created that class for that reason. And we find it really helpful in terms of kind of streamlining our process. It also saves some folks that really don't understand that running a market business is a real business. And we hate to see them kind of muddle in and spend their savings and spend a lot of time only to find out that this can't be profitable for them the way they design their business, or this is just way more work than they thought it was going to be. They just want to make brownies.
Yeah. So yeah, kind of explaining that that's a little bit more complex. I think some folks, if you have maybe a smaller market or you have the time or the intention to kind of individually usher your farmers market vendors along, or if you're in an area that has little to no regulation on food. So that's, another one of the main reasons that we do we did Vendor 101 and continue to offer it is because the health department regulations in San Diego and insurance and all these things, they're very complex. So it's like if I was to answer a vendor's question about what kind of permit they need, I would have to ask them a bunch of very specific questions. I'd have to go through, tell them they need a state license, they need a county department, they need a commissary kitchen, like all these things. And so it turns into a much longer conversation than maybe like, hey, you need like a seller's permit. And then you can just come pop up and like, we'll taste your brownies before you come, which is also wonderful, but maybe that's a shorter conversation. Sure. So if you're at a market where the regulations a little bit more complex, or you have some structure, a little more structure to your market, it's helpful if your vendors come in with that education. And Vendor 101 certainly provides that. They can get it other places, or if you want to spend the time to do that with your vendors before they come on, I think it's just so valuable because then they start out on the right foot, because there's nothing worse than seeing a vendor that has a great product and great intention come in and just flounder because they can't get the business side correct. And they can't get the how do you operate at a market kind of correct. They're just there and they don't know what they're doing, and it's really hard, and they're struggling, and they're like losing money, and it's really frustrating. And then maybe they leave the market and you're like, don't go, you had vegan ice cream, you're amazing. Like, it's like, so I mean, you'll save everybody a lot of heartbreak if you just kind of help them from the get-go.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was our old slogan that we use. We still use it sometimes. Passion. Everybody's passionate about their product. Mm-hmm. Passion, meet profit.
Make sure it's making it work financially while also bringing something tasty to the market.
That's right. So, what did Charlotte Smith used to say? I can lose money laying on the beach. I don't need to work this hard to lose money.
Exactly. She's like, if I want to lose money, I'll go to Hawaii and just lay on the beach there. I love that. I got to remember that.
Make sure you're profitable. We get quick questions sometimes where they'll say, do you have space for such and such? Mm-hmm. We never answer that. Mm-hmm. I mean, what I do is say, we need a full application first, because we don't truly know what you're selling until you fill out that application. Give us some links to your Instagram. Let us look. And again, it's one of those things that if you want a really quick answer from us, that's probably going to be no. Mm-hmm. But if you want a really well-considered answer, fill out that application. Give us as much information as possible about your product, because sometimes we can read between the lines and see that what you're making could extend to something being packaged a little bit differently that would be huge at a farmer's market. Mm-hmm. So, we've had an Ethiopian food vendor that wanted to sell hot food. We have a limit on how much hot food we can take. But if she took that injera and packaged it in a bag, people are dying to take bags of that stuff home. Mm-hmm. and do her Berbera spices and her other seasonings and sauces. So sometimes when you fill out an application, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to take what you're applying to sell, but we may be able to tell you how to reframe what you're making to make it a perfect farmer's market product.
Exactly. So if they're saying on the phone or in person at the market, do you have space for this hot food? Like, our answer is no. But if we get an application from you, we can look more thoroughly into that. So kind of giving that short answer to folks that are applying, or if you're a vendor, kind of taking that into consideration. Can you tweak what you're offering to kind of fit into what the market has space for?
Yep. Give us lots of information and we can help.
Yep.
So what we loved, kind of to make things short for vendors who are listening in or potential vendors, we love people who have read the application intro, mm-hmm. which we update regularly. And if you're a market manager, do yourself a favor and do this. We have an introduction paragraph online to our application. Actually, it's several paragraphs. And it says, at this market, we are full in this category. We don't expect any openings soon. At this market, we're completely farm focused. We're not taking any non-food applications. We give you a rundown. We try to not be too exclusionary, because, that one perfect non-food guy will turn up that has cutting boards, and, we do want him. So we're careful about how our intro is worded, but we're careful about it. And so if you're a prospective vendor, if you read that, you can save yourself some time going and some rejection by applying mm-hmm. to places that just don't have space for you in that category. An applicant that answers every question on the application is important to us, because it indicates a level of attention to detail. So if you're sort of skipping around and just answering every other question, our suspicion is going to be that when you get to the market, you're going to skip around and pay attention to every other rule. Yeah. And that's not going to work for us that well. So we want to know that you're paying attention to detail, that you're going to keep your permits up to date. We want you to have visited the market, as Bridget mentioned. We want you to get a feel for what the vibe is there, what other vendors are at that market that may have too much clear overlap with your product, or that may be a good product to synchronize with yours, that it could make a good marketing tool. Hey, you have fresh pasta at the market. I have these incredible marinara sauces. I bet if I came in, that could be good for that pasta vendor. So it's good to be aware of all those things. Of course, be professional or at least courteous. If you come on a little strong and tell us that we don't know what we're doing in curating this market, you're probably going to get a chance to tell that to somebody else and not to us on a weekly basis.
So it just boggles the mind, I get being very passionate. There's like there's a line between being very passionate about your product and also telling the market manager that they have to take you, that the market manager doesn't know what they're doing if they don't take you. And
oh my gosh,
the other things that we hear, I'm like, whoa, I'm like, you're talking to the person that makes the decisions.
I know sometimes it's kind of a thing that I'm sure they think is benign, where they say, my cookies are better than any other cookies you have in your market. Well, I chose those cookie makers. So what you're saying is your judgment sucks.
Yes, very insulted.
You've picked inadequate cookie bakers, and I'm going to show you how to do it right.
Yes. Or they'll say like, oh, this market's like a little slow. If I was here, I could like pick up the foot traffic. I'm like, whoa, I work full time to make this market what it is. It is not slow. It is a lovely market. Like you need to understand like who you're insulting when you throw those things around. So as a market applicant, I would just, pro tip, don't say any of those things. Just talk about your product. You can just say, my product's really great. I'm really passionate about it. I'd love to be a part of your market. I'd love to be a part of this market family. I think I love to be here every week, or, say something like, go with the positives.
Go with the positives.
Yeah,
for sure.
And if the answer is no, don't spiral out, because, you don't want to burn those bridges on your way down the street.
That's the whole thing. Yeah. We'll talk about a little bit more about declining applications in a minute and how to handle that on both the manager and the vendor side. But yeah, sometimes that no could evolve into a yes down the road if you're courteous and professional about discussing that no to begin with. We also like people to tell us a little something special about their product. I got this recipe from my aunt, or I developed this recipe for gluten-free bread because I have a child who's celiac. At the same time, no offense, we're all really busy. And so a book-long explanation of not only that you developed this bread because your daughter's celiac, but that you knew somebody in 3 states over that was celiac, and their great aunt used to be a professional burlesque dancer. And just cut it off, folks. You can only go
short and sweet.
Just because, and those are entertaining. Some of those applications are entertaining, but really, really, really long explanations that are not relevant to the product. I just only have so much time in the world. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So find something in between. We love a story. Sometimes if you're just like, I sell these cookies and I want to be at this market, it's like, well, you're not getting me excited. So a little story is great. If it's something unique, vegan or nut-free, grain-free, something that's, kind of like catering to a special niche customer, maybe that's helpful, or just like, I make a great chocolate chip cookie. Yeah. It tastes great. Like this is what I got. So just, tell us a little bit about yourself. You want to get to know us. I explain that to folks that are coming in and talking or calling on the phone. If they talk to me at the market, I say, when you fill out your application, like, tell us, like, give us a little story and what can you say in like 3 lines or less, where I can get to know you and like why you want to be part of this market and what you're going to bring.
And what makes your product different.
Yeah.
I mean, differentiation is the biggest thing that we're looking for.
Yeah.
And then last, a perfect application for me is one that knows what's required. So if there's certain permits required for what you do, you've already gotten them, or you indicate that you know that they're required and you're on the way to get them, or be open to learning.
Yeah.
So sometimes folks don't have the right permits, and we'll go back and say, you're going to need this kind of permit. If you want more information, you might check out Vendor 101. And we get a response like, hey, I was a restaurant manager for 5 years. I know what's required. Well, honestly, that's not going to tell you what's required to sell cookies at a market.
Yeah.
So being open to learning and listening and not assuming that you have all the answers, that's a helpful approach.
Yeah. And as a market manager, it's nice to have a way to communicate that to folks without coming off like pushy or bossy or gatekeepery, and just kind of come at it with like a orientation of education and wanting them to get better and wanting them to do the right thing that falls within the regulations, but kind of being firm on that.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, we want our vendors to succeed. It doesn't help them. It doesn't help us to have them pop into the market and then struggle. We want everybody who comes in to make a profit and be happy there and stay with us for a long time. That's the goal.
Yep.
So sometimes you can tell from the application, or just due to the number of spaces available in your market, you can tell that this is not going to be a good fit and you're going to have to turn that vendor down. And it's funny, we've talked about this a number of times. I think we've talked about it on the podcast. I know we've talked about it in conversations at the conference, but it still comes up regularly, both with new market managers and with even really experienced market managers.
Mm-hmm.
How do I turn somebody down? How did I tell somebody that I can't take them? And the big question I'm hearing over and over, I got an email from a really experienced market manager not too long ago, is how do I turn somebody down? Not because I don't have room, but because I don't like their product.
Yeah, that's a hard one. It's so hard because you get to make that call because it's your market and you're curating it, right? And you have all these reasons that you're doing what you're doing. But also they, of course they think their product is wonderful, and
Sure.
other people might as well. It's not just that it's just them and it's horrible. It's like, that's a great fit for just a different audience.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if you're, as a market manager, you probably know your population. Now, I will say that sometimes taking something that does not appeal to your current population of shoppers could open up a new population of shoppers for you.
Yes.
So you do want to not get stuck in that always done it this way thing. You do want to remain open, but sometimes you just know it's not going to be a good fit, or it just doesn't fit your mission. You may have, let's hope you have, kind of a structure either in your mind or on your website that says what your market's about. It's a producer only market, for instance, which is, a lot of the markets that we deal with, kind of our thing too. So you're only looking for things that are made by the seller. Well, that means those croc charms probably just aren't going to be a good fit at your market.
Yeah.
And so you need to be able to say that. But this vendor who has diligently accumulated or curated their selection of croc charms to be the cutest selection ever is going to be offended and sad about that.
Talk about TikTok trendy too. It's like they're on trend. So yes, but if it's not a good fit with your market, if it doesn't meet that criteria, you do have to let them know that without being disparaging toward the product that their business is.
Right. So. Yeah. To understand they're probably in love with their product, as they well should be.
Yes.
So you don't want to be dismissive. You don't want to be derogatory or insulting about it. Obviously, you want to be courteous and professional, just like we expect from applicants. That's what you want to be as a manager. I mean, even the vendors we love, which in our case is farmers, sometimes we have to decline them because we don't want to oversaturate a category. We know that we have enough strawberry farmers right now. And we know that if we brought in, we're right where we should be. And if we bring in one more, everybody's profit's going to decline. So even though we'd love to see that new strawberry farmer or one who's been in another market, now they think our market's ready for them, we can't take them because we don't want to damage the business of everybody who's already there. And sometimes it's as simple as that.
So it's not always like a product that we don't like. Sometimes it's a product that we love, but it's just too many, or not the right type, or just not a good fit, or, there's a lot of reasons why you have to kind of let someone down and decline either a new product on their table or a new vendor that's coming into your market.
Yeah. I mean, with us, a lot of times and this is funny because I'm talking to a fellow market manager that I love who's in Washington, D.C., and he's like, oh my gosh, if we could just find bakers. For us, we get so many bakery applications, and somebody will come in and say, hey, well, this bakery product is completely different than the other bakery products that you have.
Yeah.
So I am differentiated. And just because you have cookies and fast breads and scones and biscuits, I have macarons. Well, yeah, that's true. But think about a grocery store. If there are 4 bread aisles, bread and baked good aisles, you don't have enough room for produce aisles and for dairy aisles and for all those other products that you have to carry to make it easy for shoppers to get what they need for the week. So even if your product is really different than what's at the market now, your category may be full. And that's tough to explain to people.
Yeah. And it's really hard, and you can only explain so much because sometimes they just don't get it. And that's okay. Like, we don't understand every single business. There's plenty of businesses that I don't understand the reasoning behind it. So you kind of got to do a little explanation on why and, what your criteria is, and then just kind of say, I'm sorry, and that's that. I will say at this point in our lives, I am transitioning into, the great takeover, and when Kat and I were doing applications together, we'd get applications and I would say, oh yeah, it's a great fit. Bring the samples, bring those cookie samples in. Okay, I'm going to get you placed. I do all the happy stuff. And honestly, I would be like, Kat, say no to this person. Or like, Kat, we'd be a little good cop, bad cop. And so I'd say, Kat, like, you're the salty one. Like, go tell this person that this doesn't fit. And she, and she's like, sure. But now it's like, I have to say the yes and the no. And I feel so bad. I am like sad. Like I will type an email, like my heart is breaking because they're sending the nicest email. Their application's beautiful. They have a beautiful website with their beautiful jewelry and they're very excited about it. But it's like I can't put another jewelry vendor in. So it's like, I'm so sorry. We don't have space available, and it's just like my heart is breaking. So as a market manager, sometimes you're like, this is a hard part of the job.
It is a hard part.
It feels like rejection for myself, even though I'm the one doing the rejecting. And so yeah, it's tough.
It's so tough. So, the best advice is to just give enough explanation as you have time to give, so that people understand that there's nothing necessarily wrong with their product.
Yeah.
You just don't have room. I try to give them what I don't want to do is give them false hope. So I won't say, hey, we'll keep your application on file. We'll let you know. If I know that the likelihood of anything in that category opening up in the next couple of years is extremely slim, I don't want to give them that hope. I want them to move on to other events. I will often suggest other markets and events.
Yeah.
And especially right now for us with non-food and with baked goods and that kind of thing, luckily, yes, it's Christmas in August. We are already taking applications for our holiday markets.
That's a great way to point them to like an event that you're going to do that's going to have a lot of non-food. It's going to have a lot of jewelry. It's going to have a lot of the categories that you wouldn't accept.
We do a little looser criteria at our Christmas Village. So because it's not adjacent to our farmers market, it's held on an evening after a big farmers market. That is such a long day. We will probably take that cute croc charm vendor there.
Yeah.
But we would never take them at our weekly farmers markets, which are more based on locally made, locally produced, sold by the maker.
And sometimes you just have to explain that because if they get into Christmas Village or a holiday event, they might think, oh, I can get into the weekly farmers market. So you just got to be real clear. Like this does not fit into our criteria for our weekly farmers market. It is something that we would accept for our holiday event. Is that something you're interested in? It's a one-time thing.
Exactly right. Yeah. So we're able to do a lot of that now. Sometimes too, I'll suggest other markets. So I'm aware of other markets that are more craft oriented or markets that aren't even farmers markets. They're makers markets, or there's a pop-up once a month in a neighborhood near us that does just really crafts, and you don't even have to make them. They're just, they're a fun kind of crafty non-food market with some food trucks. And if they say, when will you have space? I try to be really clear that we just don't know.
Yeah.
Mostly. It's just highly unlikely that we know. Sometimes I'll tell them, well, we've got this market that's growing. And again, we talked about that earlier. After I put in 5 more grocery vendors and 2 more farmers, we'll have space for another prepared food. If you're still looking, we'll check back with you.
Yeah, exactly. And so kind of giving them not false hope, but if you do have maybe the possibility of something you can do with them in the future, I usually try to say, hey, like, you don't need to wait around for us. You should go talk to all these other markets. It's really, you have a great product. Like you could get into these other markets, I'm sure, but just, we would like to see you in the future if you want us to check back with you, or you can check back, like be like in a couple months, just pop us an email. And then I might say, oh, you know what? We're still like, don't have room for that. Right. So just kind of keeping a relationship with them.
And so on the vendor side, in order to keep that relationship good, I will reasonably often tell somebody that we don't have room and have them come back and say, oh, I think you do. I've looked at your market and you don't have anything like mine.
Yeah.
And then I will try again courteously to explain that might not have anything exactly like yours, but it either doesn't fit our mission, or it will throw your overall category out of balance, or another reason that's happening. Now, what needs to happen at that point, if you want to get into one of my markets eventually, is you need to say, oh, okay, I get it. I mean, hopefully I've explained to you well enough that you get it now. If you come back and tell me that I don't know what I'm doing as a market manager, you're probably not going to hear from me if and when that category opens up.
Yeah.
So just be aware. You don't want to burn those bridges. You want to be courteous. You want to be professional. And at some point as a manager, if I'm getting a lot of, argumentative kind of emails after I tell somebody I don't have space, at some point I'll just stop answering. Your time is valuable. You don't have to keep responding once you've been very clear about an answer. No is a full sentence.
Yeah.
It's not, we'll have people say, oh, I sent in an application, you never answered. Well, no, we did, but no is an answer.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's just what it is.
Yeah.
And you have the right as a market manager at some point to just decline to keep that conversation going if you've been clear and you've been polite about what the situation is.
Yeah. If you've done a little explaining, and then just told them what the answer is, you can go ahead and let them go. I always, have to remind myself, and certainly like our staff, because sometimes people will come and try to talk to them about getting into the market. You just don't take it personally, because you have to remember these are small businesses. And especially if you have a busy market where they know they could make money at your market, it's probably very frustrating to them if they were maybe in their mind planning on just getting in. Like, I think a lot of vendors come to the market and they're like, oh, I'll just tell them I want to join now.
Right.
And so they were planning on it the whole time. And then when you're like, oh no, either we don't have room right now, or we're not ever going to have room for you because it's not a criteria or it's not a category that we host. They're very defeated, maybe embarrassed, frustrated, and they might take it out on you. And it's, you just have to say, this is not personal against me. They're running a small business. That's stressful. I understand that. We're running a small business. They might not understand that part. So just kind of balancing that out with, as soon as I say yes to somebody and they're very excited, I try to keep that in my mind. Like, I said yes to somebody. They're doing really great. I'm nurturing this vendor along. I just try to think back to them while, declining other vendors and trying to find that balance. A little self-care for market managers.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think you're good too at talking to our team about that. And our team, of course, they're not even the ones that have the right or the responsibility to evaluate applications and let people enter out.
Mm-hmm.
But they have the same feeling as you do. They don't want to disappoint somebody.
Mm-hmm.
They feel sad if they have to reject somebody. And so sometimes your team members will have a tendency to say, well, go ahead and apply again. Maybe we can have a place for you to try and avoid hurting somebody's feelings, but you're just creating false hope. And then they get to the point where they really are angry because they feel like they've been kind of dragged along.
Yeah. So it's a balance. I mean, that's a good reminder too, is just to have clear conversations with your staff. And just say, look, this is not your responsibility. It is perfectly okay for you to say, I don't handle those matters ever. Here's the email that you can connect with the market manager. Or, if I'm there, they'll say, hey, like, Bridget, can you talk to this person? And I'll say the same thing. You need to email. But I think empowering your staff to say, I don't handle that. Like, wow, that's cool that you have a business. Not even saying like, that's a great product. Like, just say, wow, that's so great that you have a business that you want to apply. This is how you apply. I don't make those decisions. That's okay. Because a lot of the times I train the staff, like, don't say, I don't know. Like, if someone says, do you have this kind of bread? And you're not sure if a baker, I don't want you to be like, I don't know. I want you to text somebody and say, hey, or, give me a call and say, hey, is this baker down the street where you are? Do they have CD wheat or whatever they're looking for? Or, oh, some customer is looking for a vendor that was here 5 years ago. Like, can you answer this question? So I don't like it when they say, I don't know. I want them to find the answer. But when it comes to potential vendors, I think empowering your staff or your volunteers to say, I don't handle that kind of stuff. I don't know if you can get in or not. You need to contact the management.
This person can
tell
you.
This is the person that does that, or the people, or the board. If you have a board or like a panel that makes those decisions, like, just direct them that way. And then it helps them. It helps the vendor, because then the vendor isn't confused about who's making the decision.
Right.
Yeah. Just making sure that they don't have to go into a big explanation.
Right.
Even if they know, even if they hear you talk to vendors or they have a good understanding of what is, what our criteria is, they don't need to have that conversation on site.
Right.
Unnecessary. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we didn't talk much about what the situation is when you have a board of people that's jurying your vendors. And I think we're running out of time, so we'll have to get to that in a different episode. But a lot of times it's not even you that makes the decision. It's a group of people that are a jury, or it's your board gets to weigh in on applications. Sometimes that can be handy, actually, because you can say, nothing personal, it wasn't me, but our team overall has just looked at this and it's not a good fit for us right now.
Yeah, exactly. So that can be helpful. I would love to speak to a market manager that has a board, actually, and kind of get some more information about how those work. I've talked to a couple folks, like at the conference or just over the years on the podcast, but just to say what's best practices when you're dealing with a board or
best
a panel.
Practices as a group, and how much power does the actual on-site market manager get more votes than somebody that doesn't do that part of the process?
Yeah, and how to maybe stick up for yourself if that's not the case.
We'll line somebody up and we'll plan that for a future episode.
There we go.
That sounds like a good one.
There we go. So yeah, applications are super time consuming, but also one of the most fun parts of what we do. And discovering and nurturing new entrepreneurs is the most satisfying part of our work, I will say. And you just keep that in mind. Just spending all that time with these applications and sending those rejection letters and all those things. Just remember that this is...
And the occasional acceptance letter, which is so fun.
It's so fun. Or maybe not even the occasional. Maybe you're accepting a lot because you're growing a big market. That's always like thrilling. And watching folks come to the market and get those big, customer followings and be really successful. That is like, honestly, my greatest joy as a market manager. Our jobs are so weird. I'm usually like dealing with buskers and dogs and tow trucks and no parking signs and all the weird stuff that we have to do. But seeing these vendors, like, especially if they come on and they're struggling a little bit at the beginning, but then watching them like really turn it around and like they're showing up on time and they're like upping their display and they got a little staff now and they're doing great. And, it's just, that is just the best part of this job.
The very best.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening today. While this episode was supported by Vendor 101, it was also supported, as they all are, by you, our listeners. Thank you for listening, leaving reviews wherever you listen to podcasts, emailing us with comments and questions, and being part of our Farmers Market Pros community all year long. Your conference attendance and online class and consulting purchases and referrals lets us keep providing this free content every week after week, rain or shine, all year long. Take advantage of Vendor 101 to help start your market business or streamline your application process by clicking the Vendor 101 link at the education page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Thanks for listening to Tent Talk today. Please leave us a review on your podcast app, YouTube, or wherever you access this podcast, and tell us how you're enjoying Tent Talk. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss the next episode. Connect with fellow farmers market folks in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community. Follow us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros and find online education and other resources on our website at farmersmarketpros.com. Don't forget to sign up for our email newsletter while you're there. Tent Talk is brought to you by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Today's episode was produced by Haley Pascalades. Original music by David Mead. Join us next week for another great episode.